My parents called it just a small dinner after not inviting me to my brother's birthday party. I showed up anyway. My brother thought I didn't see his kid slip Dad's missing $7,800 cash envelope into my coat pocket. I checked it and froze. Then I quietly slipped it into my brother's jacket. 20 minutes later, the police walked in. The kid hit me chest high in the front hallway of my brother's house and wrapped both arms around my ribs and pressed his face into the wool of my coat, and I felt the weight go into my right pocket before he stepped back. Otis was 9 years old. His hair smelled like the party store popcorn Grady always sets out in a rented cart at his own birthdays. He looked up at me and grinned with a gap where his front tooth had been at Thanksgiving. Dad said you would come. He said give you extra hugs because you are lonely. Then he ran off toward the family room. He ran fast, the way kids run when they have been given a job and finished it and want to be somewhere else before an adult can ask a follow-up question. I stood in the hallway. Coats behind me on hooks. Grady's black wool coat on the top hook. Randall's Carhartt jacket on the second. Isla's plum pea coat on the third. 14 other coats on the 2 long racks Isla had rolled in from the garage. The party was already loud in the family room. Someone had put on a Kings of Leon album from 2008 that Grady always plays because his taste in music stopped moving when he was 24. My right coat pocket had 6 ounces of paper in it that had not been there when I walked in the door. I could feel the outline through the wool. Rectangular, dense, the exact weight of a bank strap of hundreds. I took my daughter Ivy's hand off my sleeve. She was 12. She had come with me even though I had not been invited, because when I had told her at 4 o'clock that we would swing by Uncle Grady's for cake, she had looked at me and said, "Dad, are we invited?" I had said, I did not check. She had put on her boots. "Iv, go find your cousins. I need to hang up my coat." "Dad, are we in trouble?" "No, honey. I need 1 minute." She looked at me the way she has looked at me since her mother moved to Charlotte 3 years ago, which is with the calibrated patience of a kid who has already learned that adults tell the truth in installments, and none of them are big enough on their own to be worth arguing with. She walked toward the family room. I watched her go. Then I walked past the hallway bathroom door, opened it, stepped inside, and locked it. I took the envelope out of my coat pocket. Manila, sealed, bulging. I broke the seal with my thumb. Inside was a bank strap of $100 bills. First Federal Credit Union Band, red ink, dated last Tuesday. I counted the exposed edges. 78 bills. $7,800. Behind the cash, a folded piece of paper. I did not unfold it. I did not need to. I already knew 3 things. First, my father Randall had told everyone in Asheville for 4 years that he had closed his first federal account in 2018 when the branch went to a call center. Second, the top bill had a small red teller mark in the upper right corner, which meant a bank employee had counted it out of a drawer that same afternoon. And third, my father had called me from a blocked number at 412 that afternoon to say the birthday dinner was small, only immediate family, and that I did not need to come. It was 6:58 now. Somebody had put nearly $8,000 in the coat pocket of a chef who had been told to stay home. 6 ounces of paper that the man who told me to stay home had insisted for 4 years he no longer had access to. I stood in the bathroom for 40 seconds. I did not think. I let my hands do it. I put the folded paper and the cash back into the envelope. I resealed the flap with my thumb. I opened the bathroom door. I walked down the hallway to the coat rack. Grady's black wool coat. Top hook. I slid the envelope into the inside breast pocket where a real estate broker keeps his card holder. It went in clean. The wool did not bulge. I patted the outside once with the flat of my hand. Nothing. Then I turned and walked into the family room. If this is the story you came for, subscribe to Family Secret Tales. Because when the police walked in at 7:22, they were not looking for Otis. Before I tell you what my father did next, I need to tell you 3 things. My name is Judd. I am 41 years old. I am the executive chef and 18% equity partner at a restaurant called Sage and Thorn on Battery Park Avenue in downtown Asheville. I run a kitchen of 22 people. I have been working line kitchens since I was 17 and chef de cuisine or higher since I was 29, and I have thickened veal stock in more restaurants than my father has ever eaten in. I make $91,000 a year plus quarterly distributions, and I raise my daughter Ivy alone in a 2-bedroom on Kimberly Avenue that has a red front door and a small backyard where she grows tomatoes in the summer. My mother Marlo died on a Tuesday morning 6 years ago. She was standing at her kitchen counter in the house on Overlook Road making banana bread. She had 2 overripe bananas on the counter and the copper measuring cup from the nested set she had bought in 1988 at a hardware store in West Asheville, and she was measuring flour when her left arm went numb. She sat down on the linoleum. My father was in the garage. He found her at 11:34. The ambulance came at 11:41. She was pronounced at Mission Hospital at 12:56 that same afternoon. She had been left-handed. She had held pens and knives and spoons and measuring cups in her left hand her entire life, and when she signed her name, the letters leaned to the right in a specific slant that I would have recognized in a dark room. I have looked at her signature on birthday cards for 39 years. I know it. I took the copper measuring cup home from her kitchen 6 months after the funeral when my father asked me to help him clear the pantry so Grady's wife Isla could redo the shelves. It sits on a shelf above my prep station at Sage and Thorn. My line cooks call it Chef's Mom's Cup. They know they are not to touch it. They do not know why. I have never told them. The third thing is Father Emil Barzun. He is 71 years old. He was my mother's pediatrician for 22 years before he retired at 62 and went to seminary. He is now a priest at St. Eugene's on Colburn Street. He was a doctor for 34 years, and he has been a priest for 9, which means he has spent his entire adult life sitting with families, at the moments the families would rather not remember, and he has developed a specific quality that I have only ever met in one other person, which is that he does not fill silence. The night of my mother's funeral, I sat in my car in the parking lot of the funeral home for 2 hours because I could not lift my hands to the steering wheel. Emil walked out to my car with his coat collar up and stood beside my driver's window. He did not open the door. He did not knock on the glass. He did not tap on the window with a knuckle to get my attention. He stood there in the November wind with his hands in his pockets for 40 minutes, and I watched him from inside the car, and he watched the parking lot lights, and neither of us moved. When I finally rolled the window down, he said, "I am going to walk to my car now. If you want to drive, drive. If you want to sit, sit. I will not be far." He walked to his own car. He sat in it with the engine off for another hour and a half. He was 72 degrees on the outside and probably 52 on the inside, and he did not turn on his heater once because he did not want me to see his headlights come on and think he was leaving. I finally started my car at 10:47 that night. He watched me pull out. Then he drove home. We have never spoken about that night. He calls me every Sunday at 4 in the afternoon and asks if I want coffee. I say yes about half the time. On the Sundays I do not say yes, he does not ask why. On the Sundays I do, he makes a pot of coffee that is too strong for my ex-wife's taste and exactly right for mine, and we sit at his kitchen table and he lets me talk or not talk. And either way is fine with him because Emil is not a priest the way most priests are priests. Emil is a doctor who took a second job at the end of his life, and the second job is listening. That is who I am. That is who my mother was. That is who has kept me upright. I walked into the family room. 14 guests. Grady at the bar cart making an old-fashioned for someone. Isla at the kitchen island with a tray of stuffed mushrooms. My father Randall in a leather armchair by the fireplace with 3 of his poker friends around him. Otis running past the coffee table with a plastic sword. Ivy at the dining table with Grady's daughter Sadie, both of them scrolling on a tablet. Randall saw me. His face did not change. The face of a man who had already called the police 30 minutes ago and was waiting for something to happen he thought he had already engineered. He did not stand up. He looked at me over his glass of bourbon. His voice carried the way voices carry when a man wants everyone in the room to hear the sentence he is about to build. "Judd, I did not think you were coming. Dad, I brought Ivy. I see that. Grady turned from the bar cart. Grady is 39. He has the smile of a real estate broker in a market that is always about to correct. He held up his cocktail glass and gave me the small nod that has been his substitute for genuine acknowledgement since we were teenagers. Judd, there is beer in the fridge. I said, thanks. I am not staying long. That is when Randall stood up. He set his glass on the side table beside his chair with the particular care of a man who has been waiting for a stage to be his. The three poker friends went quiet. Two of Grady's real estate colleagues turned their heads. Isla lowered the tray of mushrooms to the island. Ivy looked up from the tablet. She looked at me first, then at Randall, then back at me. My father delivered his sentence to the whole room. You were not invited because you have become the kind of man who confuses his own opinion with everyone else's. You run a restaurant where you serve strangers what you refuse to cook for your own father, and you tell yourself that is discipline. That is not discipline. That is contempt dressed up in a chef's coat. You have not sat at my table since Grady's 4th of July because sitting at another man's table would require you to admit somebody else knows how to feed people. Go home. Take your daughter with you. Grady's guests do not need you standing in a corner staring at their plates like a health inspector at a birthday party. The Kings of Leon album was still playing. Somebody had turned it down. I did not know who. Isla was still holding the tray of mushrooms. Her fingers were white on the edges. Grady was looking at the floor. Ivy was looking at me. Her face was very still. I did not answer. I walked to the appetizer table. I picked up a stuffed mushroom off a silver tray. I put it in my mouth. I chewed. The mushroom was over-seasoned. Too much thyme, not enough shallot, and the breadcrumb topping had been baked too long, which meant the caterer had held them under a warmer for at least 20 minutes before the guests arrived. I swallowed. I picked up a cocktail napkin. I wiped my fingers. The mushrooms are dry, Dad. If you are going to hire a caterer for a party at your son's house, hire one who understands ambient timing. I turned. I walked to the dining room. Ivy was still watching me. I gave her a small nod. She went back to the tablet. I sat down on the third chair. I did not take off my coat. The room resumed slowly. Somebody laughed at something. Isla put the tray back on the counter. Grady returned to the bar cart and started making another drink. Randall sat back down in his leather chair and picked his bourbon back up. His hand was steady. He had rehearsed the sentence in his head, and he had delivered it, and he was waiting for the next thing to happen, which he believed he had also arranged. He was wrong about which next thing. At 7:22, the doorbell rang. Ela went to answer it, because Ela always answers doors. She opened the door, and I could see her from the dining room. She stepped back. Two uniformed police officers walked into the entryway. Behind them, a man in a dark wool coat, mid-40s, with a badge on his belt and a small notepad in his hand. Isla said, in a voice that was not her voice, Randall, there are officers here for you. Not for me, for Randall. If you have made it this far, subscribe to Family Secret Tales. Because at 6:40 that afternoon, my father had called the Asheville Police Department and reported me for stealing $7,800 from his home safe. Detective Merrick Locke walked into the family room with his badge visible and his notepad open. He was the kind of man who arrives at a house full of adults and slows the room down by his posture alone. He looked at Randall. He looked at me. He looked at Grady. He looked at the poker friends in the corner. Then he looked back at Randall. Mr. Ashford, I am Detective Merrick Locke with the Asheville Police Department. We received a call from this address at 6:40 this evening from a Mr. Randall Ashford reporting a theft of approximately $7,800 in cash from a residence on Overlook Road. Mr. Ashford named his son Judd Ashford as the suspect. Is Judd Ashford present? Randall stood up again. His bourbon glass was still in his hand. He did not put it down. He is. He is right there. Officer, I want him searched immediately. He was in my house this afternoon. He knows the combination to my safe. He had access. Locke did not look at me. He looked at Randall. His voice was even. Mr. Ashford, we have executed a search warrant based on your report. Before we detain your son, we need to search this residence for the cash and for any related items. Do you consent to a search of this house, given that you filed the report from this address? Randall did not hesitate. He was still convinced this was his moment. Search anywhere you want. Search him first. Search his coat. He came in from the hallway. His coat is on the rack. Locke nodded to one of the uniforms. The uniform, a woman in her late 20s, walked to the hallway. She took my coat off the hook. She patted both pockets. She checked the inside breast pocket. She checked the sleeves. Nothing. She put it back on the hook. She walked back into the family room and shook her head at Locke. Randall's face did not move, but his hand did. The bourbon glass shifted a quarter-inch to the left in his palm. That is impossible. He must have moved it. Search the bathroom. He was in the hallway bathroom. I saw him. The uniform went to the bathroom. She was back in 90 seconds. She shook her head again. Locke turned to Grady, who had not moved from the bar cart. Grady's hands were on the marble surface. The bar cart had a rolled leather edge, and Grady's palms were flat on the leather. Mr. Grady Ashford, is that your coat on the top hook of the hallway rack? Yes, may we check it? Grady's eyes went to Randall. Randall's eyes went to Grady. Something passed between them that had never passed in front of me before. It was not communication. It was recognition. Grady said yes. The uniform walked back to the hallway. She took Grady's black wool coat off the top hook. She reached into the inside breast pocket. She pulled out the manila envelope. She held it up. Grady's legs went first. He sat down on the bar stool behind him without deciding to. The stool caught him. His shoulders came in. His mouth opened a half-inch and stayed there. His right hand, which had been on the leather edge of the bar cart, slid off and hung at his side. He looked at Randall. Randall was looking at the envelope. Randall's bourbon glass finally moved. It went down, onto the side table. Too hard. A quarter-inch of bourbon splashed onto the wood. Nobody wiped it up. Locke walked to the uniform. She handed him the envelope. He opened it. He counted the exposed edges of the bills. Then he unfolded the piece of paper that had been behind the cash. He read it. His face did not move. He read it a second time. He looked up. Grady Ashford. Randall Ashford. This appears to be a consulting agreement dated April 2020 between the two of you for cash payments of $6,500 a month for consulting services. Signed by both parties. Witnessed by a third party. The witness signature is Marlowe Ashford. He looked at me. Mr. Judd Ashford. Your mother's name is Marlowe Ashford. She died in 2019. Locke did not react. He looked down at the paper. He looked at the witness signature. He looked at the date, April 2020. He looked at Randall. Mr. Ashford, your wife signed this document 1 year after her date of death. The Kings of Leon album had ended. Nobody had put on another one. The family room was silent except for the small sound of Ela setting the tray of mushrooms down on the island, because her fingers had finally lost the strength to hold it. Locke let the silence sit. He was good at silence. That was part of the skill. He was letting Randall talk himself into a hole he had already dug for himself, and Randall, who had spent 39 years of my life talking his way out of every corner he had painted himself into, opened his mouth for the wrong sentence. That is not her signature. That is a forgery. Someone must have forged it to make me look bad. Locke looked at him. He did not smile. He did not frown. Mr. Ashford, who else in this house would have had access to a document you signed in April 2020 that is now in an envelope of cash you filed a police report about at 6:40 this evening, claiming your son had stolen from your safe? Randall did not answer. Locke turned. He looked at me. His expression softened by exactly 1 degree, the way a professional's face softens when they are moving from a suspect to a witness. Mr. Judd Ashford. Would you tell me what you know? I stood up. Ivy was watching me from the third chair at the dining table. Sadie had put the tablet down. Ela had turned around. Grady was still on the bar stool. Randall was still standing. I walked into the family room. I stopped in the middle of the rug. I looked at my father. The strap is from First Federal, Dad. You closed that account in 2018. Retired men do not withdraw banded cash from tellers. 22 words. Randall's face did 3 things. His jaw, which had been leading his face for the last 40 minutes, stopped. His eyes went to the strap on the top bill of the cash Locke was still holding. His right hand, which had put down the bourbon, came up and touched his own chest, just below the collarbone, as if he were checking that the shirt was still buttoned. His whole body seemed to lose an inch of height in the 7 seconds it took him to understand that the strap was the thing he had never accounted for. Locke looked at me. He said, "You knew what was in the envelope before we opened it." I recognized the strap when I opened the flap in the hallway bathroom. First Federal uses red bank tape. My father claims to have closed that account 6 years ago. He has been telling this family and his friends that he does his banking online. He does not. He has been going to the Broadway branch every Tuesday for 2 years. I have seen his truck in the parking lot when I have driven to the farmer's market. I did not know why. Locke wrote something on his notepad. And the contract. I did not open the contract in the bathroom. I felt the paper behind the cash. I put the envelope back together and placed it in my brother's coat because it did not belong to me, and it was clearly intended to end up in my possession by someone who wanted me to be found with it. I did not want to be found with it. So I moved it to a location where the person who put it in my pocket could not deny knowing what it was. Grady closed his eyes. He did not open them for a full 4 seconds. Locke turned to Randall. "Mr. Ashford, I need to inform you that this is not the only reason we are here tonight. The Asheville Police Department has had an open financial crimes investigation on you since May of last year. 8 months. This report you filed at 6:40 this evening was the first opportunity we had to enter this house on a warrant. We took the opportunity. Please put your hands behind your back." Randall's hand went from his collarbone to the arm of the leather chair. He gripped it. He looked at Grady. Grady did not look up. He looked at me. I did not look away. They took him out of the house at 7:44 p.m. Isla was crying by the front door but not making sound. Otis had come in from the family room and was standing next to his mother holding her leg. Sadie was still at the dining table with the tablet. Ivy had walked over to Sadie and put her hand on Sadie's shoulder. She did that without being told. She is 12 years old. She has been paying attention. The second uniform stayed with Grady. Locke told Grady he was not being arrested tonight, but that he needed to remain in Asheville and would be contacted in the morning. Grady nodded. He did not say anything. Locke walked out with Randall in cuffs. The front door closed at 7:47. The 5 things that came out over the next 4 weeks are things. The consulting contract was one of 47 documents police found in a locked file cabinet in Randall's basement over the following 72 hours. All of them were payment agreements between him and various Asheville area contractors for informal short-term financing. All of them were in cash. All of them were unreported. Detective Locke's team, working with the EAR's Criminal Investigation Division, traced $387,000 in unreported income over 6 years. My father had been running an illegal lending business out of his kitchen since 4 months after my mother died. He had used my brother Grady's real estate license to originate the loans, disguising the commissions as consulting fees written off on his tax returns. Grady was arrested at his Chestnut Ridge office on a Tuesday morning at 9:14, walked out in cuffs in front of 2 clients who had shown up for a 9:15 listing consultation. One of the clients took a photograph on her phone as Grady was being loaded into the back of the cruiser. The photograph appeared on a real estate agent watchdog blog by 4 o'clock that afternoon. Grady's face was slack in it. He was looking at the ground. his tie was loose. Above the photograph, the caption read simply, "Realtor Grady Ashford of Chestnut Ridge Realty, arrested in connection with $387K unreported cash lending operation." The blog had 11,000 subscribers in the Western North Carolina real estate community. By Wednesday afternoon, Grady's brokerage firm had removed his profile from their website. By Friday, the sign on his office door had been taken down. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission suspended his license the following Monday. I almost sent Grady a text message the night of his arrest. I had his number pulled up on my phone. My thumb was over the message box. I did not send anything. Grady had been at the bar cart when Otis planted the envelope, and Grady had told Otis it was a Christmas card surprise, because Otis had told me that in the car 3 days later when Ivy and I picked him up from Isla's mother's house to take him to see the Christmas lights at the Arboretum. Otis was 9. He had done what his father told him to do. He had not understood what he was doing. But Grady had understood. And Grady had sent his 9-year-old to plant felony evidence on his older brother's coat, because Grady was 39 years old, and he had never once in his adult life taken responsibility for a mistake he had made. And I had known that about Grady since he was 22 and had wrecked our mother's Buick and told the insurance company I had been driving. I did not send the text. Grady would have to sit in his condo alone and think about what he had made his son do. And if he was capable of thinking about it, that would be his sentence. And if he was not capable, that would be an even longer sentence, and I would not be the one to serve it. Isla filed for legal separation 11 days after the party. She did it because subpoenaed bank records from Grady's business account revealed monthly payments of $2,200 to a woman named Cadence over the past 18 months. Isla had never heard the name. Cadence was a paralegal at a firm Grady used for closings. Isla drove to the firm the day after the records came out and asked to speak with Cadence. Cadence came out to the lobby. Isla did not raise her voice. She said, "Do you know Grady is married?" Cadence said, "I did. I am sorry." Isla nodded once and walked out. She filed the separation paperwork that afternoon. Otis and Sadie went to live with her at her mother's house in Weaverville. Otis started asking every night at bedtime whether he had done something wrong at Uncle Grady's party. Isla told me that on a phone call 3 weeks later. I told Isla to bring Otis to my house on a Saturday. She did. I sat with Otis on the back porch and I told him that he had done exactly what his father had told him to do, and that nothing about that night was his fault, and that grown-ups sometimes ask kids to help them with things that are not what they say they are, and that was on the grown-ups, not on the kids. Otis nodded. He did not cry. He said, "Uncle Judd, is Grandpa going to be mad at me?" I said, "No, Otis. Grandpa is not going to be mad at you. Grandpa is going to be in a place where he cannot be mad at anybody for a while." Otis nodded again. Then he asked if he could see the tomato garden. I showed him where the tomatoes would go in the spring. He walked the perimeter of the raised bed twice and told me his favorite kind of tomato was the yellow ones. I said we would grow yellow ones this year. He asked if he could come help. I said yes. The seed money for my father's lending operation was $180,000. That was my mother's life insurance policy. It was supposed to be established as a trust for my daughter Ivy, per a handwritten letter my mother had left in her jewelry box, which I had found 6 months after the funeral, and had assumed my father was honoring because he had told me the trust was being set up through his attorney. It was not. He had cashed the policy. He had used the money as capital for his operation. My attorney filed for restitution against his frozen assets and recovered $147,000 of the original $180,000. Ivy's trust was established the same week under the terms my mother had written by hand on the letter I had kept in a folder in my dresser for 6 years. The forged signature on the consulting contract was not the only forgery. Investigators found 9 additional documents in Randall's file cabinet where he had signed my mother's name as a witness or co-signatory, all dated after her death. Marlowe's estate had been closed in 2020. Reopening a closed estate is not simple. My attorney did it anyway. The probate court in Buncombe County reopened the file in early February. Every document Randall had used with my mother's name post-death is now subject to review, and any income or asset that touched those documents is subject to clawback. That process will take 2 years. It is already underway. The last thing was smaller than the others, but larger to me. My father had been claiming to be a deacon at Concord Baptist for 4 years. He was not. He had never been. He had been telling the borrowers he approached that he was a man of the church, so they would trust him. When the story broke locally, the pastor at Concord Baptist posted a public notice on the church's Facebook page clarifying that Randall Ashford had never held any position at their congregation and was not, in fact, a member. The post received 211 comments in 24 hours, most of them from Asheville area contractors who had borrowed from Randall in the years since Marlowe died, saying they had believed he was a deacon and had extended him trust on that basis. 2 of those contractors filed additional criminal complaints. Detective Locke opened 3 new files off the church post. I almost went to Concord Baptist the Sunday after the post to see if the pastor knew anything else. I did not. I went to Riverside Cemetery instead. My mother's grave was on the West Hill. I had not been in 5 months. There was a small folded piece of paper on the headstone, weighted with a stone. I opened it. Handwritten. 2 words. I'm sorry. No signature. I put it back under the stone. I did not know who left it. I found out later. It was Isla. Hollister called me on a Wednesday afternoon at 2:17. Hollister has been my father's poker partner for 22 years. His voice on the phone was tired. Judd, your father is 68 years old. He is going to prison. His attorney says testimony from you that you and he had not spoken about money in years, and that you were not aware of any of what he was doing would reduce his sentencing exposure. He is not asking you to lie. He is asking you to say what is already true. I almost said no and hung up. I did not. I let his sentence sit in the air for a moment because Hollister had been in my parents' house at holidays since I was 19, and Hollister had eaten my mother's biscuits and laughed at my father's jokes, and I owed him at least the courtesy of a real answer. Hollister, did you ever borrow money from my father? Silence. How much did you borrow, and when did he collect it back? Hollister hung up. I set the phone down on the counter of my kitchen at Sage and Thorn. My prep station was in front of me. Above the prep station on the shelf was my mother's copper measuring cup. I picked it up. I weighed it in my hand. 6 ounces. Cold copper. The handle was worn where her thumb had gone for 34 years. I set it back on the shelf. I turned back to the flour bin. My afternoon prep list had a 240-portion focaccia bake that needed to start in 20 minutes, and I had a line cook who was late. I did not have time to be angry at Hollister. I did not have time to feel sorry for my father. The dough needed to be started. That is what a kitchen is. Sunday morning. 4 weeks and 2 days after the party. Sage and Thorn Kitchen. 7:14 in the morning. The restaurant did not open until 11. Nobody was there but me and Ivy. Ivy had asked on Thursday if she could come help me make the Sunday focaccia. I had said yes, and I had brought her at 7, because Ivy is 12, and Ivy has never been in the kitchen with me on a workday, and I wanted her first time to be when the room was quiet. She was standing on a step stool at the prep station. She was wearing one of my line cook aprons that came down past her knees. She had a stainless steel bench scraper in her right hand because I had shown her how to portion dough, and she had immediately decided the scraper was her favorite tool. Her hair was tied back. She had flour on her cheek. She did not know she had flour on her cheek. I was not going to tell her. I took the copper measuring cup off the shelf. I held it out to her. Her eyes went to it. This was your grandmother's. She took the cup. She held it with both hands. She turned it. She looked at the small dent on the rim where my mother had dropped it in 2003 when Grady had knocked into her at the kitchen counter. Ivy did not know about the dent. She looked at it. She looked at me. Is it copper? Yes. Why did you never bring it out before? Because I did not know what to say about it. She held it for another 5 seconds. Then she set it down carefully on the prep station next to the flour bin. She said, "Can we make banana bread with it?" I said, "Someday, not today. Today is focaccia." She nodded. She picked up the bench scraper. Across town, my father was in the county holding facility on Broadway, pending a grand jury indictment on state and federal charges. Grady was in his condo on Marymount Avenue because Isla had moved out with Sadie and Otis and taken the house. The Chestnut Ridge house was on the market. There had been no offers because word had gotten around and no buyer wanted the address that had been on the police report. Randall's poker circle had disbanded. 4 of the 6 members had turned out to have been borrowers. 2 of them were now cooperating witnesses. My Aunt Cordelia, my father's sister, had not called him in 29 days. She had called me on the 2nd Sunday of February to ask about Ivy. I had told her Ivy was fine. She had said, "I know she is. I wanted to hear you say it." Then she had told me she was moving to Boone at the end of the month to live near her son and that she would not be coming to Asheville for holidays anymore. She said, "I am too old to keep pretending, Judd. I love you. Tell your girl I said hello." The Riverside grave still had the small folded note weighted under the stone. I had put it back where I found it. I did not know if Ela still visited. I hope she did. At the prep station, Ivy was cutting the first proof of focaccia dough into 180-gram portions. Her scraper cuts were uneven because she was 12 and had been portioning dough for 11 minutes total in her life. I let her keep cutting. Even portions are for cooks who need to serve 160 covers. Uneven portions are for daughters who are learning. Emil's text came in at 7:41. Sunday coffee at 4. My kitchen. Bring Ivy. I typed back 1 letter. Why? The copper measuring cup was on the prep station beside the flour bin. The morning light through the kitchen window was on the copper. The handle was worn. The dent was on the rim. The dough was proofing. My daughter was cutting portions and getting them wrong in the specific way 12-year-olds get things wrong, which is to say completely and without apology. If this story found you today, subscribe to Family Secret Tales and share it with the person in your life who has been telling everyone they know where a certain envelope came from and who was going to end up holding it. My mother Marlo was left-handed. She made banana bread on Tuesday mornings. She died on a Tuesday morning. She signed her name in a specific slant, and no man who ever loved her could have thought a forged version of that slant would hold up in a courtroom, and my father either did not love her or did not know her, and both of those are answers I have decided to stop asking for. Ivy cut another portion. It was too small. I said, "That one is short. Add a piece from the trim." She said, "Okay, Dad." The copper cup caught the morning light. The oven was preheating. The dough was ready.